But first, this year's Mercury Prize, which, as you may have heard, has been won by the British indie singer-songwriter PJ Harvey, who notches up a few impressive statistics. She was the first woman to win the prize 10 years ago. She's been nominated more times than anyone else, 4 so far, and she's the first to win the Mercury twice, this time with her album Let England Shake. In a moment we'll be hearing from Chrissy Murison, one of the judges of this year's prize and the editor of the music magazine NME. But first, here's Polly Harvey herself on the combative origins of Let England Shake.
One of the starting points for this record was I was looking at official war artist Steve McQueen, a recent one whose work I really like. And I posed the question to myself, what if there were such a thing as a song correspondent from the front line? How could I, if I was in that role, bring the message back somehow, put that into word but frame it in a song? What would that be like?
I've seen and done things I want to forget. I've seen soldiers fall like lumps of meat.
Now here in the studio is Chrissy Murison. Chrissy, as judge and journalist, why did PJ Harvey win?
Because it is quite simply an absolutely breathtakingly brilliant album. PJ Harvey is, I think, one of the great British artists of the age, and this really is her masterpiece. And when she talks about the making of it, she talks about how it really has been a lifetime's work for her. I think she's 41 or so now, and clearly been such a pivotal musical figure for us for so many years, but only now does she feel comfortable to tackle something so political, so in-depth, and with so much resonance.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because you could describe it as a concept album, but without any of that kind of portentous weight that used to apply to concept albums in the 70s and 80s. Did the politics have an important bearing on the judging? I know you can't go into the details and intimacies of judging, but was that one of the reasons why the album stood out?
It's obviously really hard. There's 12 albums on the shortlist, and it's so hard to be able to put them up against each other because they come from such different backgrounds, tackle such different matters, sound so completely differently. At the end of the day, what we're looking for is what hangs together as the best album, but also something that we really think will stand the test of time and will still mean something in however many years. And I think when you look at the list, this one just... brilliant albums, all of them on the list, but this one was the one that just stood head and shoulders.
How does this album, do you think, fit in the context of her career? I mean, PJ Harvey's always been evolving, and I wonder how difficult it is to remain relevant when you're 41 and you're up against people in their early 20s.
Well, I think that's why she's such a fantastic artist, because she constantly innovates. And even within this album, one of the things she does so well is finds different voices. If you listen album to album, she'll go away and she'll sound like an old woman on one song or a young child on the other. And this album, she actually does that within just, however many tracks it is on there. So she's jumping around from song to song, generations to different wars, different voices. She'll be a lost soldier on one, she'll be a mourning mother on another, and you're completely swept up in all of them.
I was going to ask whether it was unfair for her to be up against sort of lighter but sophisticated pop, but I wonder actually whether it's the other way round, and whether she because what she's dealing with is so serious, in some ways it might count against her when you're up against that kind of stuff.
I think it's hard. I mean, we sit there and we debate endlessly the different merits of all these albums, and there's certainly no rules that say because you're writing about more serious subject matter, therefore you'll have a better chance. It simply is that this album hung together so well and was such a great piece of art.
What broadly speaking, what does winning the Mercury do for your career?
Well, traditionally it certainly sees a sales spike in terms of albums, and gets you out to be heard by an audience that you wouldn't necessarily. And PJ Harvey has, a very loyal but quite a niche audience, and this will hopefully break that out. And I think one of the things that traditionally she hasn't been that interested in attending award ceremonies, doing TV spots, anything like that. But for this album, she clearly realises that she's made something so important that she really wants to get it out there in front of as many people. So I think she'll be just as happy by this win.
I hope so. Chrissy Murison, thanks. And we'll hear more music from this year's winner, PJ Harvey, later in the programme. But first, this year's Mercury Prize, which, as you may have heard, has been won by the British indie singer-songwriter PJ